You're financially irresponsible. That's why I don't involve you in real decisions. Those were my daughter's exact words, not whispered, not in private, but loud and clear right in the middle of my grandson's birthday party. I was still holding the envelope I'd brought for him, a little card with a crisp 100 tucked inside, a small tradition I'd kept since he was 3. But that day, I stood frozen 1 foot on the patio tile, the other still in the grass like my body didn't know whether to run or disappear. Everyone had gone quiet, not the kids, of course. They were still darting around the backyard, chasing balloons and sugar highs. But the adults, they heard it, every word, and most of them pretended not to. One woman, Lauren, I think, her neighbor, she even chuckled, like it was a punchline. I could see my ex-son-in-law, Jeremy, standing by the grill, flipping burgers without flinching. He didn't defend me, didn't even look my way, just turned the sausages like it was any other afternoon. And my daughter, Amanda. She looked right at me with that glazed-over politeness people use when they're done with you but still want to seem civil, like I was just someone who needed correcting. "You're the one who told me to go chase my dreams," she added, casually picking up a drink from the patio table, as if that means you get to comment on how I run things now. She sipped it, unbothered. My fingers tightened around the envelope. And yet, I didn't say anything. Not yet. I wanted to. God knows I wanted to. But I could feel my chest tightening. Not from rage, but from something far worse, shame. Because there was a time I would have done anything for her. In fact, I did. $70,000. That's what I gave Amanda when she said she wanted to start fresh after her divorce. Just give me a chance to rebuild. Mom, she had begged. Tears. Trembling hands. She looked so small that day, even though she was already a mother herself. I sold my car, pulled money from a joint savings account I swore I'd never touch, cut down to half days at work because I couldn't keep up anymore but told everyone I was taking it easy. And now, I was being called financially irresponsible, in front of people, in front of my grandson, who was standing near the lemonade cooler, glancing over, not quite understanding but watching me. There was a folding chair behind me, one of those aluminum ones with the peeling green fabric. I sat down slowly, pretending it was just my knees that gave out, not my dignity. No one offered me a plate. No one asked if I was okay. And maybe that's what hurt the most. Because somewhere between Amanda's words and the silence that followed them, I realized something. I wasn't just being pushed aside. I had already been replaced, as the sun dipped behind the hedge, casting long shadows across the yard. I watched my daughter laugh with her friends. My money built that deck they were standing on. My name is still on the deed to this house, but you wouldn't know it by the way she spoke to me. And then, I saw him. Eli, my grandson, still holding the party balloon shaped like a rocket, still in his paper crown. But this time, he was looking at me, not with pity, not with confusion, but with something deeper. Something silent, like he understood more than he let on. And in that moment, I didn't feel small anymore. I felt seen. I wasn't always this invisible. There was a time my daughter looked at me like I was everything her safety net, her flashlight in the dark, her only certainty when the world around her was falling apart. And to be honest, for most of her childhood, I was all those things. Amanda was just 6 when her father, my husband, collapsed at the wheel on his way home from a late shift. One stroke. That's all it took. One moment he was alive, bringing home rotisserie chicken in his faded blue uniform shirt. And the next, I was a widow, with a mortgage, and a daughter who didn't understand why Daddy stopped picking her up from piano class. Grief had no time to sit with me. Bills were louder than mourning. I went from working weekends at the library to taking on every shift I could find cleaning offices before sunrise, bagging groceries in the evenings, watching neighbor kids for a few extra dollars in between. And still, I'd get home just in time to warm up soup, check Amanda's spelling, and braid her hair for the next day. She never saw me cry. Maybe that was my mistake. I kept every breakdown behind bathroom doors, every cracked knuckle from scrubbing too hard hidden under long sleeves. When I caught the flu one winter and nearly fainted scrubbing a school hallway, I still showed up for the PTA bake sale that afternoon. I told myself, keep showing up, keep smiling. And I did. For years. Amanda never lacked food, never missed a birthday. She wore brand-name jeans to high school not because we could afford them, but because I sold the gold watch my mother gave me on my wedding day. I remember standing in the pawn shop, holding that watch in my hand, the delicate chain warm from my palm. I stared at it for 5 minutes before letting go. It was either that or tell Amanda she couldn't go on the science field trip with the other kids. I chose her joy over my sentiment, every time, even when it stung, even when it felt like little pieces of myself were being traded for her temporary smiles. And she used to say thank you, used to call me Mama Bear, used to snuggle under my arm and whisper, I'll take care of you someday. I promise. I held on to those words like they were a contract, like one day, when I was older, and the world got a little too big for me again, she'd be there to say, come home, Mom, I've got you now. So when Amanda married Jeremy, a clean-cut finance guy with great hair and terrible instincts, I clapped the loudest. I baked cupcakes with individual initials for every guest at her bridal shower. I offered to help pay for the florist, even though I was already behind on my utility bill. And when the marriage cracked just 2 years and Jeremy cheating with some intern, of course I didn't say I told you so. I sat on Amanda's floor, in her one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and a broken heater, and held her while she sobbed into a throw pillow. I don't know how to start over, she whispered. I did. I knew exactly how hard it was, and I didn't want her to ever have to know it the way I did. So I made a decision, quietly. The next morning, I drove out to the credit union and pulled $70. $70 from a joint savings account I'd built over 15 years with my late husband. Money we were going to use for our retirement cabin, a little wooden place by a lake we once dreamed about. He's gone now, and the cabin never happened. But Amanda was here, and she needed a fresh start. I didn't tell Amanda how much it was, just handed her the check with a soft, "You'll be okay." She stared at the numbers like they were in a different language. Mom, where did this come from? I shrugged, then kissed her forehead. Does it matter? She cried again, held me so tight I could barely breathe, said things like I don't deserve you and I'll pay you back. I didn't need repayment. I just needed to know she had one more shot. That's what mothers do, right? We give until the giving becomes who we are. After that, she moved into a new apartment, nicer, sunnier, started going back to school part-time for business admin, said she wanted to one day open a small consulting firm for women like me. I believed her. I even volunteered to babysit Eli, her son, my first grandchild, so she wouldn't have to pay for daycare. He was barely 2 then, all cheeks and giggles. I remember the way he used to press his sticky hands against my glasses and laugh when I made a silly face. We'd spend hours building Lego castles and pretending the carpet was lava. He gave me a reason to slow down, to sit still. And in those early years, I really thought Amanda was coming back to herself. To me, she'd call just to chat, send me photos of her homework assignments, let me review her resumes. Even signed the lease to her new townhouse with me as a co-signer just in case. She said, I didn't mind. I felt needed again. There was one afternoon I'll never forget. Amanda had come by to pick up Eli after work. I was folding laundry in the living room, and she just stood there, watching. You really gave up a lot for me, she said. I laughed. That's the job. You'll see. One day, she nodded slowly. Then, for the first time in forever, she sat beside me on the couch, no rush, no distraction, just sat. Don't ever think I take you for granted. Mom, I smiled at her and said, I know, and I really did believe it then. I held on to that moment like it was a promise wrapped in silence. But time has a strange way of peeling things back. After Amanda's business started gaining traction after the Facebook page got followers, and she started doing those speaking gigs, she got busier. Then distant. Calls became quick. Visits became rare. She stopped asking for help with her website. Stopped offering updates. told me she was figuring things out on her own now, and I respected that. I wanted her to stand on her own 2 feet. Only, the distance didn't feel like independence. It felt like erasure. One time, she forgot my birthday, said she got the dates mixed up. Another time, she left Eli with a neighbor during spring break because she didn't want to burden me. I didn't say anything. Not yet. But inside, I was grieving something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't just the loss of closeness, it was the slow disappearance of gratitude. And still, I told myself to be patient, that maybe success had made her overwhelmed, not ungrateful, that maybe she'd circle back, like she always did, because that's what hope does. It ties itself to memories, to bedtime kisses, to crayon cards that say, "You're the best mom ever," to whispers under blankets, "I'll never leave you, Mama." But the thing about memories, they don't protect you when the present decides to forget. The first time it really stung, really was Thanksgiving. Amanda had decided to host, to show Eli the importance of tradition. She said, "Funny how tradition felt like something I was no longer part of." I offered to bring my famous cornbread stuffing. She smiled, nodded, then said, "Actually, we're doing a modern take this year. Sweet potato risotto and pomegranate glazed turkey." She said it like a Pinterest board had possessed her. I showed up anyway, with my stuffing. No one touched it. It sat on the end of the sideboard, untouched and unlabeled. While everyone raved about the cranberry foam and avocado walnut kale salad Amanda made from scratch, Eli hugged me when I walked in. But even that felt practiced, like he wasn't sure if hugging me still fit into the script his mom gave him. At the table, I was seated at the far end next to a coat rack and a flickering candle that kept smoking into my face. Someone had placed a folded card with my name on it. Only, it read Linda. I stared at it for a long time. My name's not Linda. It never was. Amanda never noticed. She was too busy explaining to her friends how building a brand takes discipline and how some people just don't understand that kind of pressure. When Eli passed around handmade thank you notes to every adult guest at the table, mine was missing. Amanda glanced at me and muttered, "We ran out of glitter paper." Even then, I said nothing. But it started adding up small, surgical cuts that no one else seemed to notice. At Eli's spring play, Amanda saved a seat for her new mentor, a woman she'd only known for 2 months. When I asked where I should sit, she pointed to the back row and said, "There's more space there." When I tried to bring over a casserole after she caught the flu, she left it outside in the cold and forgot to text me back for days. And one afternoon, when I arrived early to pick up Eli from soccer, she had asked me to. Amanda looked surprised to see me. "Oh," she said, "I thought I told you it was canceled." She hadn't, but what really broke something in me was a Sunday lunch where I noticed my old wedding china on the table. Not replicas, not something close, my actual china. Blue and cream plates with tiny cracks near the rims from decades of careful use. I'd stored them in the back of my garage. I asked Amanda where she got them. She blinked, then said, "You weren't using them, and it makes the table look more polished." She didn't ask. She just took, like it was hers by default now, like I was the attic and she was the future. That night, I went home and sat in the driveway for 10 minutes before turning off the car. I kept thinking of how often I told myself it was just a rough patch, that people get distant, that she was overwhelmed. But what if this wasn't temporary? What if I was being quietly phased out? Even Eli had started calling me Nana instead of Grandma, a name I'd never used. It was what Amanda's ex-mother-in-law preferred. One night I corrected him gently. He looked at me, blinked, and said, "Mom says it sounds more modern," and somehow that stung worse than all the other little cuts. I started staying home more, not because I wanted to, but because it hurt less than showing up and being invisible. I still baked a pie for Amanda's birthday, still dropped off a book Eli mentioned he wanted, still sent holiday cards, handwritten with love, and still, no one replied. The final straw didn't come with shouting or slammed doors. It came quietly, like most heartbreak does when it's worn a familiar face for too long. It was a Wednesday, just before Easter. Amanda had texted me, asking if I could come by to drop off some documents. She said she'd be out, but that Eli would be home with a sitter. When I got there, the sitter, a young girl who couldn't have been more than 19, was watching TV while Eli played in the corner. I handed her the envelope. Then, before I could turn to leave, Eli looked up and said, "Mom says you're just here to take things." It stopped me cold. I knelt beside him. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" He shrugged like he didn't really understand what he'd said, just that he had heard it. Enough times to repeat it. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, the same one Amanda used to color on, and stared at a cup of tea I never drank. I thought about how I'd become something to manage, an obligation, a background hum, not a person, not a mother, not even a grandmother, just something to avoid explaining. And the next day, as if the universe decided to twist the knife, I received a formal envelope. Inside was an invitation to Amanda's company's 5-year anniversary gala. It looked expensive. Cream cardstock, embossed lettering, little gold accents. I turned it over, scanned it once, then again. My name was there, but not as Mom, not even as Ms., just Linda Walker, guest of extended family. No seat assignment, no personal note, just a code to RSVP and a deadline. I stared at it for a long time before setting it down. And then, I got up, walked over to the hallway closet, opened a box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were the original documents for Amanda's townhouse still in my name, a folder with the deed to the lake lot my husband and I once saved for. I had never sold it. Despite everything, I'd thought, maybe Amanda would want to build something there someday. And tucked beneath it, a small envelope with the words, "For Eli. When he's ready." I hadn't even remembered writing that. But it was there, my handwriting, shaking slightly from age, but still steady enough to mean something. I stood there for a long time, not angry, not heartbroken anymore. Just done. Done begging to be seen. Done watching myself shrink in rooms I helped build. Done handing out pieces of myself to people who treated them like loose change. Somewhere outside my window, wind chimes I'd forgotten I hung were clinking in the dusk air. The sound was soft, but clear. And maybe that's all I needed to be, clear. I didn't tell anyone what I was planning. Not Amanda, not Eli, not the few friends I still kept in my weekly church group. I didn't even write it down, but the moment I pulled that envelope labeled "For Eli," when he's ready from the bottom of that box, something inside me settled. It wasn't rage. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. Amanda's company gala was scheduled for a Thursday evening in June, some trendy event space downtown with glass walls, hors d'oeuvres on toothpicks, and women in blazers who talked with clipped words and perfect hair. My invitation still sat untouched in the drawer by my stove, but I knew I'd attend, not to clap, not to confront, just to finish. In the days before the gala, I made quiet moves. I met with a lawyer, a young man with sharp glasses and kind eyes, who didn't blink when I handed him the townhouse deed. "This is still solely under your name." He confirmed, "I know." I said, "I need to initiate transfer, not to her, to someone else." He didn't ask questions. He just nodded and got to work. I also asked him to look into something else, Amanda's business filings, just to be safe, just curious. I told him, but I wasn't, not really. I'd spent too long ignoring my instincts. This time, I listened to them. Then, 2 days before the event, I met Eli at the park. I hadn't seen him in weeks. Amanda had sent a vague text, "Busy month. We'll call soon." She hadn't, but Eli had asked to meet, privately, through the school librarian, of all people. He was 11 now, gangly, quieter than I remembered, but still with that same look in his eyes, like he saw more than he ever said. He held out something when we sat down, a small digital voice recorder. The kind I'd taught him to use years ago when he wanted to be a kid detective. "I didn't mean to record it," he said quietly, "but I left it running in my backpack, and I heard Mom talking about the house, about you." He didn't look up. I think I think she's gonna take it from you. I reached over and touched his hand. I know, I said, but I'm not afraid of that anymore. He finally met my eyes. I don't want to lose you. You won't. I promised, and I meant it. The night of the gala, I wore navy, a soft, well-fitted dress that still smelled faintly of cedar from the back of my closet. I pinned my hair like I used to in my teaching days. Wore a pair of pearl earrings Amanda had given me back when she still wrote birthday cards in crayon. When I entered the venue, no one rushed over. No one seemed to notice me at all, except Eli. He was standing near the back with a soda in hand, dressed in a too-big blazer and a crooked tie. He gave me the smallest nod, barely a movement, but it was enough. I sat near the edge of the crowd, quiet, observing. Amanda took the stage 20 minutes in. Her hair was sleek, her voice confident. She stood behind a podium with the company logo shining like a crown behind her. I want to thank everyone who believed in my journey, she said, her smile glowing. I couldn't have done it without your faith and your funding. The audience clapped. And of course, my family, my son, Eli. My mother. She paused, just for a breath. Who taught me what not to do with money? Laughter, light, but enough to twist the knife. Amanda didn't flinch, just moved on, talking about future expansion, real estate ventures, strategic partnerships. That was when I stood. No rush, no drama, just steady feet on polished floors. I didn't raise my voice, didn't interrupt her speech. I simply walked to the front, envelope in hand, and stopped at the foot of the stage. Just close enough for her to see me, for everyone else to notice. Amanda's words faltered, only for a second, but I caught it, that twitch in her cheek, that flick of her eyes, that crack in the mask she'd worn so confidently all evening. The crowd turned to look at me, some polite, some curious, a few confused. I won't be long, I said softly, addressing no one in particular. I just came to deliver something. I placed the envelope gently on the edge of the stage just beside the microphone. Then I turned to leave. But Eli walked forward. He climbed 2 steps up and reached for the microphone. No one stopped him, not even Amanda. And when he spoke, his voice was small, but it carried like thunder. My grandma gave my mom the money to start this company. He said, $70,000. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Amanda looked frozen. She also paid for our house. It's still in her name, but my mom told someone last week she was going to get it switched without asking. Said grandma didn't need it anymore. Someone gasped. Amanda stepped forward, reaching out to touch his shoulder. Eli. That's not... He stepped back. I recorded it. And then he looked at me. You always told me to tell the truth, even when it's hard. Tears stung my eyes, but I nodded. Amanda tried to laugh it off. He's just a kid. He misunderstood. I turned around. Just once. Just enough for everyone to hear me say my lawyer has the transcript. He also has the documents for the house. As of this afternoon, I sold it. Gasps again. Louder now. A woman in the back whispered. Sold. Amanda's voice rose sharp now. Defensive. You can't do that. I live there. That's Eli's home. It was never in your name. I said, calmly. Not legally. You never asked. You're doing this here in front of everyone. I nodded slowly. This is where you dismissed me. In front of everyone. The room went quiet. I didn't need to shout. Didn't need revenge. I had the truth. And the truth, when spoken softly but clearly, doesn't need backup. I walked out before anyone could say another word. Outside. The air was cooler than I expected. Crisp. Clean. Eli caught up with me near the sidewalk. He didn't say anything, just reached for my hand. We walked to the car together in silence. It wasn't until we sat inside, doors shut, the hum of the city just beyond the glass, that he finally whispered, "Do we still have that cabin land by the lake?" I turned to look at him, that soft, serious face, so much like his mother's once was before ambition clouded kindness. "Yes," I said, "we do." He leaned back in the seat and smiled. Not a big smile, not flashy, just quiet, content, safe. The fallout didn't come like a storm. It came like morning frost, slow, creeping, impossible to ignore once it settled. Amanda didn't speak to me after the gala. Not that night, not the next day, but the silence wasn't quiet. Not this time. It started with her board of advisors, 3 women and 2 men I'd only ever seen in the footnotes of her company newsletters. Apparently, they'd had concerns for a while, concerns about Amanda's spending, about a second mortgage she'd taken out without disclosing it. The moment my lawyer's transcript and Eli's recording surfaced, everything shifted, because the image she'd built, this polished, self-made woman rising from ashes, was suddenly cracked. The truth didn't destroy her. It simply revealed her. And people stepped back. Her biggest investor paused all funding, citing internal discrepancies. Her COO resigned quietly. And Amanda, who once posted daily inspirational quotes about leadership, stopped posting altogether. But the biggest blow, she was served. 3 weeks later, a court summons arrived at her door, requiring her to vacate the townhouse within 30 days. Not because I wanted to make her homeless, but because I needed to be free. And sometimes, freedom means drawing a line where someone thought there'd never be one. I offered her a choice: she could rent it fairly, under contract, or she could leave. She never responded. Instead, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she'd moved into a friend's guest house across town. Eli stayed with her part-time, the rest of the time. He stayed with me. At first, it was just weekends, then school breaks, then, slowly, without needing to be discussed, weekdays too. He'd pack his backpack, his toothbrush, his worn-out sneakers, and climb into my front seat with a simple, "Hey, Grandma." He never asked questions. He never picked sides. But one afternoon, while we were folding laundry, he looked up from a towel and said, "I like it here. It's quiet. You never make me feel like I have to be someone else." That's when I knew I'd done the right thing. Amanda called once. Just once. A Tuesday afternoon in early September. Her voice was tight, guarded, as if she'd rehearsed the tone she wanted to use but hadn't practiced what it would feel like. "You got what you wanted," she said. "Hope it makes you feel powerful." I didn't argue. I didn't gloat. I just breathed into the silence and said, "I gave you everything. Now I'm giving you freedom from me." She hung up, and I haven't heard from her since. I didn't tell anyone what to think. Didn't tell Eli what to feel. Didn't even tell my friends at church what had happened. But word travels in small towns, and whispers tend to find their way into Sunday pews and grocery store aisles. One day, after service, an older woman I barely knew approached me near the coffee station. She patted my hand and said, "We've all given too much to someone who forgot how to say thank you." Then she just smiled and walked away. I didn't need more than that. Justice, when it's clean, doesn't shout. It simply restores balance. Amanda never made a public apology. I didn't expect her to, but slowly. The distance she put between herself and others began closing in on her. Friends who used to attend her yoga retreats stopped showing up. A podcast she co-hosted was quietly taken down, and the last time I checked her business website, it redirected to a broken link. She hadn't lost everything, just the version of everything that depended on pretending. Meanwhile, Eli flourished. He joined a robotics club at school, built a solar-powered nightlight from scratch, started calling my place home without blinking. We kept things simple: dinner at the table, Sunday walks, a movie on Friday nights. No pretenses. One evening, we were walking past a bookstore downtown when he tugged at my sleeve and said, "You know, I think people forget how strong you are." I looked down at him. "Do you think I forgot too?" He grinned. "Maybe, but not anymore." And just like that, I realized something I had spent so many years shrinking, trying not to take up space in my daughter's world, trying not to be a burden, trying to be useful without being seen. But now, I was standing, fully, quietly, but fully, not because I punished her, not because I forced anything, but because I remembered who I was before the hurt, before the guilt. before the self-erasure. There was a moment late one night, after Eli had gone to bed, when I opened the drawer where I kept the last of Amanda's crayon drawings, a crooked heart, stick figures, one that said me plus mom forever. I didn't cry. I just folded it back carefully and put it away, because I finally understood love doesn't mean sacrificing your worth, and justice doesn't mean revenge. Sometimes, it just means choosing yourself, even if it's decades later than you hoped. The lake was quiet the first morning we arrived. Just me and Eli, 2 folding chairs, and the same stretch of water my husband once said we'd grow old beside. We never did, but maybe this was close enough. We didn't build a cabin, not yet, but we pitched a little tent, roasted marshmallows over a portable grill, talked about the stars and whether trees sleep when no one's looking, and for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. Not to my daughter, not to the world, not even to myself. I was just allowed to be. Eli found a small spiral notebook in the back seat of the car and started sketching out ideas for a solar house by the lake, as he called it. He asked if we could build it together one day. I'm not much of a builder. I told him. He smiled. You built me, and something inside me, something tired, something cracked, just softened. Because here's the truth, they don't always tell you when you've been broken by the people you love. Healing doesn't always come from apologies. Sometimes it comes from choosing not to wait for them. Sometimes it comes in the form of a quiet morning, or the way your grandchild looks at you without needing you to earn their respect, or just in the stillness, when no one is asking anything from you anymore. I know some of you watching this right now might be in the thick of it. Maybe you've been called selfish after giving your last dollar. Maybe someone you raised is now trying to erase your sacrifices, rewrite your worth, and maybe, like me, you've sat at the far end of a long table misnamed, unacknowledged, unseen. If that's you, you're not alone. You are not forgotten, not by the world, and not by the people like me who know what it feels like to pour your whole self into someone and still be told it wasn't enough. So if you're watching this, I want you to know, your value is not measured by who appreciates you. Your strength is not defined by how long you can stay silent, and your worth does not expire when someone decides they're done respecting you. Sometimes, the bravest thing you'll ever do is walk away from the people you raised and walk toward the person you almost forgot you were. Today, I'm not wealthy. I don't own a business. I don't host brunches with catered spreads or post curated photos of my life, but I have peace. I have space to breathe. I have a garden that blooms without permission, and I have a child Eli who knows how to listen, how to build, and how to speak the truth without raising his voice. And if you're still holding on to a relationship that keeps taking and never giving back, it's okay to let go, not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with clarity and kindness for yourself. Because sometimes, giving someone freedom is the greatest form of self-respect. So if this story reminded you of something you've lived, tell me, leave a comment, say what no one gave you space to say. And if you know anyone who needs to hear this, send it to them. We're not as alone as we think we are. And if you've made it all the way to this part, I hope you'll stick around. This space, this channel is for you, for your truth, your healing, your second chance. Don't forget to subscribe if it feels right. Not for me, but for you. For every time you've sat in silence. And now, finally, get to speak.